The day I found out about the betrayal started like any other. I woke up in the apartment I shared with Marcus, made myself a cup of coffee, and scrolled through my phone while I waited for him to come home from his night shift at the hospital. Marcus was a doctor, a brilliant one, and I had always admired his dedication to his work. He was kind, ambitious, and devoted. Or so I thought. The truth came in the form of a text message. It was from an unknown number, and it was short. Brutally short. "Does your boyfriend know about the baby?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I read the message again, hoping I had misunderstood. But the words were clear. Unmistakable. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. His girlfriend. His girlfriend. Not his colleague. Not his friend. His girlfriend. The word hit me like a physical blow. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like the world was spinning, tilting, collapsing in on itself. I called the number. It rang twice, and then a woman's voice answered. "Hello? Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why are you texting me?" There was a pause, and then the woman said, "You must be Maya. He's told me about you." "He's told me about you too," she said, her voice dripping with a condescension that made my blood boil. "He said you were just a placeholder. Someone to pass the time until he found something better." I felt like I had been slapped. "He's coming home today," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "He told me he loves me." "He told me he loves me too," she said. "He says that to everyone. It's his way of keeping people where he wants them." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. But I didn't. I forced myself to stay calm, to think clearly. "Tell me where you are," I said. "We need to talk." "Fine," she said. "I'll text you the address." She hung up, and a moment later, I received a message with an address. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was going to say or do. I just knew I needed to see her face. I needed to know the truth. The address led me to a cafe on the other side of the city. I walked in and saw a woman sitting at a table in the corner. She was beautiful, tall, blonde, with a confident smile that made me want to slap her. She looked like she had just stepped out of a magazine, and I felt suddenly, painfully inadequate. "Maya," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "I'm glad you came." I sat down across from her, my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. "Who are you?" "I'm Eleanor," she said. "Marcus's girlfriend." "Well, one of them. I'm not sure he'd call us girlfriends exactly. He's not really the commitment type." "One of them." The words echoed in my head like a taunt. He had been cheating on me with multiple women. All while telling me he loved me. All while promising me a future together. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A year," she said. "Maybe longer." I lost count, to be honest. A year. I had been living with him for 2 years. I had been planning our wedding. I had been dreaming about the life we would build together. And all along, he had been sleeping with someone else. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why now?" Eleanor shrugged, a careless gesture that made my blood boil. "I'm pregnant," she said. "And he's been avoiding me. I figured if I told you, you'd confront him, and he'd have no choice but to face me." I stared at her, my mind racing. She was using me. She didn't care about my pain. She just wanted to get Marcus's attention. But I didn't care. I was done being used. "What's his plan?" I asked. "What did he tell you about me?" She sighed, as if the conversation was boring her. "He told me you were too busy with your career to give him the attention he needed. He told me you were cold, distant, and you didn't really care about him. He told me you were just convenient." My breath caught in my throat. All those years, all those nights I stayed up waiting for him. All those sacrifices I made. And this is what he said about me. I was just convenient. I laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. "Thank you," I said, standing up. "Thank you for telling me the truth." I walked out of the cafe and never looked back. I confronted Marcus that night. I had his bags packed and waiting by the door when he walked in. He was tired from his shift, and it took him a moment to notice the suitcase. "Maya," he said, his brow furrowed. "What's going on?" "You're going to leave," I said. "Right now. And you're never coming back." He laughed, a nervous, uncertain sound. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not going anywhere." "You told me I was convenient," I said, my voice cold. "You told me you didn't really love me." You told Eleanor that I was just a placeholder. His face went pale. You talked to Eleanor? Does it matter? I asked. The only thing that matters is that you lied to me. You betrayed me. And now you're going to pay for it. He stepped forward, reaching for my hand. Maya, please. Let me explain. Explain what? I asked, stepping back. Explain how you've been sleeping with someone else for a year? Explain how you got her pregnant? Explain how you told her I was convenient? He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. I don't want to hear it, I said. I want you to leave. Now. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and desperation. Maya, I love you. I've always loved you. You have a funny way of showing it, I said. Now get out. He picked up his suitcase and walked to the door. He paused, looking back at me. I'm sorry, he said. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. Goodbye, Marcus, I said. He walked out, and I closed the door behind him. I leaned against it, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I had done it. I had finally stood up for myself. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a loss. I had lost the man I loved. I had lost the future I had dreamed of. And I had lost a part of myself that I wasn't sure I would ever get back. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and anger. I threw myself into my work, filling my days with meetings and deadlines to avoid the emptiness at home. I couldn't bear the silence of my apartment, the ghost of Marcus's presence lingering in every corner. I spent hours at the office, staying late even when there was nothing left to do. The exhaustion was a welcome distraction from the pain. But no matter how hard I tried to push Marcus out of my mind, he kept finding ways to haunt me. I would see his face in the crowd, hear his voice in a stranger's laugh, feel his touch on my skin when I was trying to fall asleep. The betrayal had left a wound that refused to heal. Eleanor called me once, to tell me that Marcus had finally acknowledged the baby. He was going to be a part of the child's life, she said. She thanked me for giving her the push she needed. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. I had lost the man I loved, and now the woman who had helped destroy my relationship was building a family with him. It felt like the universe was punishing me for reasons I didn't understand. I didn't cry. I had spent enough time crying over Marcus. Instead, I channeled all my rage into something productive. I went to the gym every morning before work. I started running, pushing myself until my lungs burned and my legs ached. The physical pain was a welcome distraction from the pain in my heart. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Evelyn. She helped me work through the anger and the shame, to see that I wasn't responsible for Marcus's betrayal. You can't control what other people do, she told me. You can only control how you respond. I also started journaling, pouring all my raw emotions onto the page. The words came out jagged and angry at first, but over time, they became softer, more reflective. I wrote about the lessons I had learned, the strength I had found, the hope I was starting to feel again. I also started volunteering at the hospital, something I had always wanted to do but had never found the time for. It felt good to help others, to be a part of something bigger than myself. I met patients who were fighting battles much harder than mine, and it put my own pain into perspective. It took time, but slowly, the fog began to lift. I started feeling like myself again, and I realized that I was stronger than I had ever known. I didn't date for a long time. The thought of trusting someone again felt impossible, like trying to swim with a weight tied to my ankles. But I also knew I couldn't let Marcus's betrayal define the rest of my life. I needed to move forward. The day I met Dr. Ethan Mitchell was completely unexpected. I was at the hospital, picking up some paperwork for a volunteer project, when I accidentally bumped into him in the hallway. I was so flustered, barely able to form a coherent sentence. My mind was still elsewhere, tangled in the chaos of the past year. I'm so sorry, I stammered, I wasn't looking where I was going. He smiled down at me, a warm, reassuring expression that made my heart skip a beat. He was tall, with sandy hair and kind eyes. I had seen him before at the hospital events, but we had never actually spoken. It's okay, he said. I was lost and fought myself. Are you okay? Fine, I said quickly, a little too quickly. I'm just a bit distracted. Want to talk about it? He asked. I'm a good listener. I hesitated for a moment, but then I found myself telling him everything. About Marcus. About the betrayal. About the months of pain and loneliness. It was easy to talk to him. He didn't judge me. He didn't pity me. He just listened. I've been there, he said when I finished. Not exactly the same situation, but I know what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trusted. Really? I asked, surprised. He nodded. My ex-wife. She left me for my best friend. It was the worst thing I've ever been through. I didn't think I'd ever recover. And you did? I asked. He smiled. I did. It took a while, but eventually, I realized that I couldn't let what happened to me define who I was. I had to move on. I felt a surge of hope. If he could recover from his pain, so could I. We started meeting for coffee at the hospital cafe, talking about everything and nothing. He made me laugh, something I hadn't done in a long time. He made me feel seen, something I had forgotten was possible. One night, after a particularly long shift, he walked me to my car. I had a really nice time tonight, he said, looking at me with those soft, warm eyes. I'd like to see you again. Off the clock. I felt a flutter in my chest. I'd like that too, I said. Our first official date was at a small Italian restaurant, the kind of place that felt intimate and cozy. Ethan told me about his work, his patience, his passion for helping others. He told me about his family, his childhood, his dreams for the future. And I told him about my past. About Marcus. About the betrayal. About the months of healing. I expected him to run. I expected him to look at me differently. But he didn't. He just listened, his eyes full of compassion. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, he said quietly. You don't give yourself enough credit. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in years, I felt like someone truly saw me. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as a person. A person worth loving. We started seeing each other more and more often. He was patient and kind, never pushing me to move faster than I was ready for. He understood my fears, my doubts, and he never made me feel like I was too much. I had never known what it felt like to be truly loved. Not the kind of love that was conditional or transactional, but the kind that was unconditional and unwavering. With Ethan, I finally understood. Ethan and I dated for 2 years before he proposed. 2 years of laughter, of healing, of building a life together. He was everything Marcus wasn't: patient, kind, and unwavering. He made me feel safe, like I could finally let down my guard and be myself. The proposal was simple and intimate, just the way I wanted it. Ethan had taken me on a weekend trip to the countryside, a quiet little cottage surrounded by rolling hills and wildflowers. We had spent the day exploring the countryside, and in the evening, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Maya, he said, turning to me, his eyes shining, I know I've told you this before, but I want to tell you again. You are the most incredible woman I've ever met. You've taught me that love is worth the risk, that healing is possible, and that the future is always brighter when you have someone to share it with. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Ethan, what are you saying? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a beautiful diamond ring, sparkling in the fading light. Maya, he said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to be there for you through every joy and every struggle. I want to grow old with you. Will you marry me? I was crying so hard I could barely speak. Yes, I managed to say. Yes, I will. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and I threw my arms around him, holding him tightly. We stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A few weeks before the wedding, Marcus reached out to me. He sent me a message on social media, telling me he wanted to meet and talk. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted it and moved on. But I couldn't. A part of me needed to see him one last time, to close the chapter for good. We met at a cafe near the hospital. He looked older, tired, his eyes carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. Maya, he said, his voice cracking, I know I don't deserve your time. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you more than I could ever make up for. Then why did you ask to see me? I said, my voice calm. Because I need you to know that I regret everything, he said. Every single day, I regret what I did to you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away. I looked at him, this man who had broken my heart, and I realized I didn't feel anything. No anger, no pain, no longing. Just the quiet peace of someone who had finally let go. I've moved on, Marcus, I said. I'm happy now. I'm marrying someone who loves me, who respects me, who would never betray me. He nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'm happy for you. I mean it. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Thank you, I said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus stood up. I should go, he said. Take care of yourself. You too, I said. He walked out of the cafe, and I watched him go. He had taken so much from me, my trust, my dignity, my faith and love. But I had gotten it all back, piece by piece. And now, looking at him, I felt nothing but peace. The wedding was perfect. I wore a simple white gown that made me feel beautiful and elegant. I walked down the aisle to the sound of a string quartet, and at the end of the aisle, Ethan was waiting for me, his eyes full of love. I took his hand, and I knew I was home. I was finally where I was meant to be. The first year of marriage was everything I had ever dreamed of. Ethan and I settled into a comfortable rhythm, building a life together that was filled with laughter, love, and mutual respect. We traveled to places I had only ever seen in pictures, explored new cultures, and made memories that I knew would last a lifetime. He was my partner in every sense of the word, and I had never felt more complete. But even in my happiness, the past still whispered to me sometimes. I would hear Marcus's name in passing, or see a couple that reminded me of what we had once been, and a shadow would pass over my heart. It wasn't pain anymore. It was just a reminder of how far I had come. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Marcus, postmarked from a city I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I opened it, my mind racing with the possibilities. Part of me wanted to throw it away without reading it, but I knew I wouldn't be able to let it go. The past had a way of lingering, and I needed to exorcise it once and for all. The letter was handwritten, his familiar scrawl covering the page. It was long, filled with apologies and regrets and a desperate plea for me to understand. He told me about his life after Eleanor, the mess of it all, the chaos he had created. He told me he had lost everything, his job, his reputation, his sense of self. And he told me that he had never stopped thinking about me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, he wrote. I know I hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I wanted you to know that I've finally started to change. I've been going to therapy, working through my issues, trying to become the person I should have been all along. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I read the letter 3 times, letting the words sink in. A part of me felt a flicker of empathy for the man he had become. He had finally taken responsibility for his actions, and that was more than I had ever expected from him. But I also felt something else, something that surprised me, indifference. I set the letter down and looked out the window at the garden I had planted with Ethan. The flowers were in full bloom, their colors vibrant and alive. It was a reminder of the new life I had built, the happiness I had found, the love that had healed me. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. The chapter was closed, and I had no desire to reopen it. As the years passed, Ethan and I welcomed a daughter into our lives. We named her Lily, a symbol of the hope and joy she brought into our world. She had her father's kind eyes and my stubborn determination, and I knew she would grow up to be someone extraordinary. Life was busy and chaotic, filled with sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. But it was also beautiful. Watching Ethan hold our daughter for the first time, his face a mixture of awe and love, I felt a peace I had never known was possible. I often thought about the journey that had brought me here. The years of pain, the moments of doubt, the long road to healing. It had been a difficult path, but it had led me to exactly where I was meant to be. One evening, Ethan and I were sitting on the porch, watching Lily play in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over everything. I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Do you ever think about the past?" I asked quietly. He was silent for a moment, his hand finding mine. "Sometimes," he said. "But I try not to let it consume me. The past is just a story we tell ourselves. It doesn't define who we are." I nodded, his words echoing in my heart. The past was a part of me, but it didn't define me. I had risen from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever. "Thank you," I said softly. "For what?" he asked. "For saving me," I said. "For showing me that love was still possible." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "You saved yourself," he said. "I was just lucky enough to be there when you did." I smiled, the tears streaming down my face. I had survived the impossible, and I had come out stronger than ever. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy me had become the foundation of my strength. The pain that had once consumed me had become the source of my wisdom. And the love that had once eluded me had finally found its way home. I was whole. I was happy. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. I was Maya. I was a survivor. And I was loved.